Hello, hi everyone. My name still remains Ayuba Michael, and then welcome to our favorite discussion where we get to discuss issues that will help improve your life, that will help you better your options in life, and also help you see in a better perspective and in a better light. I want to specifically say the aim of my discussions and videos is to educate you, bring you to the reality on ground concerning the things happening in your life. I also see that through this discussion, I'm able to influence you to doing better things that will profit you and make you a better person. It is always my goal to see that people are actually doing well in their businesses, in their academics, in their personal lives. So, this particular video and the previous one, the many more I will be doing, are aimed at educating everyone who listen to me and watch my videos, or people who will eventually come in contact with this video, either on YouTube or on Facebook, to that anyone who comes in contact with it will learn from it, and that it will impact them and make them better persons. All right, so today we'll be talking about reading, and a lot of us, including myself, really want to be great readers and read enough books, learn a lot. I used to tell my friends that up until now, I don't know quarter of what I really want to know, because knowledge is one thing that I really want to have, wisdom is one thing that I really want to have. I don't just want to grow into experiences without enough knowledge to balance it up. So, one could actually be very experienced. I don't know how to balance that now. Very experienced, but not knowledgeable enough. What it means is that you have lived number of years, and then you have interacted with people of different ideas, but in yourself you do not really possess the requisite knowledge to actually match up with your realities. So you have worked in a firm with a lot of rich people, with a lot of wealthy people, with a lot of influential people, but in yourself you do not really possess the knowledge that will make these rich people value. They only value on the basis that you know how they work, how they operate. But truly, you do not have the requisite knowledge that will make them bring you in. So it's like you are seeing how these things are being done, but you cannot actively participate because there is a limitation holding you back. So, to expose yourself to this knowledge, it could be personal, it could be formal, through formal education, but whatever that be, whatever that it may be, our focus this morning or this time right now, whatever time you're seeing this video, is that how do I go about reading that I will read effectively, or I will become a very passionate reader? There is one of my friends that reads a lot. I really love the fact that he loves reading to the extent that he can sit down for 6 hours, 7 hours, even up to probably 13. He did that in IGMB actually, and he became a record breaker. So he's my friend Emmanuel Belusa, and then he reads a lot. I actually like him for that, and I wish I could get to that level. All right. So, but today is not talking about my personal habits or how I wish I could have gotten to that level with him, because it's no competition. We are built differently and then different energy. But what I want to actually say concerning reading this morning is that to develop a reading habit can be sometimes a little bit difficult, because there is this saying that we learn how to read, then we now read to learn. So the first stage of learning how to read is to usher you into an opportunity to gain knowledge. The other aspect is now where you now have to struggle with the habit of reading, and then we don't have to struggle with the habit of reading and then to learn, because okay, you have known how to read, day, come, all those kind of things you have learned, and then how do you now read them to actually get high profile information or higher knowledge? So in that regard, that's where I'm coming in from. So let's go first of all with what we all know what it means to read. Open your pages, see the alphabet combination, understand them, and then make meaning out of them, and then You now graduate from alphabet combination, you now go to words, phrases, from phrases, you then go into sentences, and then we'll now talk about paragraphs. So in that series of documents, the information contained, how you understand them, that's what it's all about. Reading is all about. So the question is, what do you read if you want to develop your reading habit? You know, there is this saying that if you want to read, you get recommendation from people, you go and collect books from here. I think that is good when you have actually developed the stamina to read. At first, when you're beginning to learn how to read, just start with anything. Because there is this temptation, like, okay, let's take example, Robert Greene. His books are usually voluminous. I think I've seen one of my friend, Energy Matthew, was the former president of USA. He reads his book, Robert Greene, and then you see those books are very voluminous, and then maybe you have heard of great things about Robert Greene, and then you want to read about him. You want to read his book. And then if you are not a die-hard reader, you end up, sorry, if you and if sorry for that interruption, and so if you are not a die-hard reader, you will see that you will lose the passion, you will miss the opportunity and all that. So in order to help, and in order to actually make it worthwhile when it comes to reading and all that, start with some of those things that are easy to read. Let's take, for example, newspaper, because when you're reading newspaper, you're not reading it to actually keep the information active in your head, but it's just a reflective knowledge. It becomes a repertoire, like you own it. So the information you get from newspaper, it forms a larger block of your knowledge. With time, it grows, and then it's in your head, and that's anytime you want to communicate, you communicate within the lines of knowledge and wisdom, because you have actually read things related to that, but you can't remember them actively, but they are there. So you start by reading things that will form a larger block of your knowledge, that no one will be asking you, what did you read today? No, you get that kind of thing. And I think that's what makes academic reading difficult sometimes, because you are reading to put it actively into writing, to repeat it in our system today. So you start with reading things that are easy to read. It could be storybooks. Then once you've seen that, okay, you can go with storybooks of 50 page, 100 page, 200 pages becoming easier. Then you now move to what to read, because after getting so familiar with reading, and you can now go ahead and read books, you realize that not every kind of book actually add to your knowledge. And that's where you get to what you read. Now, this is where you now filter the kind of books you read, and what time will you give to books, certain kind of books. And then we'll now go back to when you are able to select what you are supposed to read, what kind of books you are supposed to read. Then you see that you will narrow down your approach to knowledge. There are certain things you will read for the purpose of general knowledge. You cannot ignore the writings of things happening in the political space, because, of course, one day you might want to participate in politics, or it is needed for your family knowledge to educate your children or your older parents who don't know what is happening, or they are not politically oriented. So it becomes imperative that you read round. But in your desire or in your goal of becoming a person, it's not everybody that you want to be. You might want to be an excellent accountant, you might want to be an excellent lawyer, a doctor, a nurse, a pharmacist. Just mention them. So because of that, you might have to narrow down some of the things you read. Let's take an example. You have interest in theology. Then, in addition to your profession, if you are not a theologist, or you're not a pastor, a minister, in addition to that, you see that you have to pick books related to theology and then read them. Now you see that because you have interest in theology, you have to apportion extra time to what you read, including that of your profession and that of theology. Let's take, for example, I'm just giving an example. So you have more theological books to read, you have more books related to your profession to read. That will aid your knowledge. But if you want to apportion the same time you give to news to your profession, you're going to have a problem. If you want to apportion the same time you have for interesting aspects of knowledge like theology that you want to acquire knowledge in, it becomes difficult. Or science, let's say for example. So you have to balance the weight at which you attach to every knowledge you'll be acquiring within that period. All right. So that's what it means when we say what to read. Then you have now selected and narrowed down what you read. Now remember, when it comes to reading, you see this voluminous reading. Even when you have narrowed down an aspect to read, you might not necessarily need to read everything. There is this book I have by Doug Howard Mills. I have made several posts from that book, just from reading from page 1 to about 70 thereabout, and the book is about 200 pages if I'm not mistaken. But I've made several posts from that book, from the inspiration I get from that book, without necessarily reading the whole of that book. And this part of the discussion I'm moving to is not to encourage lazy reading, but there is something Eric Thomas said. He said there are a lot of people who tell you, I've read this book, I've read that, and then you see no change. That is one of the crux of my message today. You see no change in their life, but they have read almost all the books you mentioned. If you mention Ben Carson, I've read him. If you mention Eric Thomas, I've read him. If you mention Tony Robbins, I've read him. I've read T.D. Jakes, I've read. They're just mentioning great authors. Robert Greene, I've read him. Howard Mills, I've read. George Orwell. They just mention books upon books. But the fact is, when you read books, are you able to do any deep thinking? Are you able to do anything that will show that actually these books I have read influence your decision, influence how you speak, influence your knowledge, influence your character and your personality? Because I noticed that, especially when we were in the university, there were so many people who were proud of reading so many books. With all due respect, because it took a lot of discipline to actually read these books. But I now realize that you have read this amount of book, and then I look at these few pages of these books, I'm like, or the back or the covers, I'm like, this book is informative enough. It's enough to transform a person. It's enough to help your character develop into a fine one. You have read books on love, several of them, but you cannot even properly love people. You have read books on communication, how to speak. But today, if they call you to speak in a congregation of 50 people, you'll be turning your face, right? You'll be hiding your face. So, what have you been reading? If you have been reading all these things and you can't really make anything out of it, I think, is it Jim Edward, or what is that his name, that wrote this book on digital marketing? And I think it's one of the most comprehensive books in digital marketing. And I will say without any fear that that book has actually contributed to how I caption some of the things I write on Facebook. And it has helped because it grew my engagement. After I turned on the professional mode of my Facebook, I can realize that my engagement were reducing. So I had to try to engage some of the things I learned from that book. And then that was when I was able to pick up people actually engaging my post again. So there are certain books that you might not necessarily need to apply everything you have read in that book. You just need few lessons that will change your life. This book, Richest Man in Babylon, is it by George? What now? I actually checked the name of that book before coming on this video, but I'm trying to judge. I'm trying to remember that name, but we all know this book, The Richest Man in Babylon. I just want to give an example of that book. That book is so informative, financially informative enough that if you can apply only chapter 1 of that book, you walk out of. If you can apply them strictly, maybe in the next 1 year, you will be getting yourself in a better financial position. And the lessons I learned from that book are some of the lessons that I might not necessarily need to have all the money in this world, but I will still look very clean, comfortable, and people will think I'm swimming a lot of money. It's not hypocrisy I'm talking about right now. I'm talking about you being able to live within your means, even with the little you earn. That book will teach you how to maximize, and so many other financial books will teach you how to maximize what you have and how to benefit from what you're actually earning or what you have at the moment. So people need to read books to influence their character and personality instead of reading them to massage their ego of, I've read this book, I've read this book. The issue is, if you have read that book, what are you learning? Eric Thomas pointed that passionately. He said, yeah, you said daily that you have read this book, you have understood this thing. Please, what have you been able to learn from these books you have read? How have they influenced your daily decision making? I know a lot of people, in fact, they go to the chef and tell you, I've read this book, I've read this one. And then you are becoming so stiff. I know somebody who reads this. Okay, I don't want to talk about that so that I will not offend religious people. But you read in your religious book daily, you see peace, you see love, you see, but you can't even live with your neighbors. So the problem is, what are you reading daily? What are you reading daily? You do your devotion every day, you observe your prayers, you observe your quiet time, you observe your prayers 5 times or 3 times, you observe your quiet time as a Christian. You are just there. So you are reading this book, you are not seeing the compassion of the proponent of the religion you follow. You are not seeing the mercy you showed to people. You are not seeing the love you showed to people. You are not seeing how you was able to manage to live with those coming around him peacefully. Some of us today cannot even maintain a proper conversation with people from the other faith without offending them, irrespective of which religion you belong to. So what is the essence of reading so many books and then they are not making impact? There's this book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, by, is it Steve? I'm trying to remember his name. Steve what now? He died, I think maybe 3-4 years ago. Steve what? I can't remember that particular name now. But 7 Habits of Highly Effective. If you Google it, you see that book. See, just the first chapter of that book, as complex as it is, if you can apply the principles, in fact, you will learn a lot. I read the first 3 chapters before the owner of the book requested for the book back, but I know the things and the information I got there. Why is it that you have read so many books on public speaking and then up till now you can't even stand up and say something convincingly to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people? I got to a level that I became so conscious of how I speak, how clear my voice is, how loud it is or how low it is, and how I can use it as a means of negotiation in the midst of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people. How I apply my voice, how I apply the little I know. I might not know something very well or so deep like that, but if I speak about it, you'll be like, wow, let's go by his idea. How am I able to do that? It's not by reading. I will just tell you that it's not by reading everything, because I will tell you that there are so many books I really want to read. In fact, I will even tell you, I will tell you, even right now, on my table in my room, there are some books still there. I have not even opened them. I only opened them to see the author and then read a little bit about the book, maybe the cover, the back, the front page, and the back cover, and then I left them there. They are still on my table. And the reason why I have not kept them where old books are kept is because I have not read them. They are still there. I have realized that I will not be able to read everything, but how are you able to read the ones that are essential? When you pick a particular book, look at the table of content. There are certain things or there are certain subject matters that you need. You might not need to read everything there. You might just have to jump to that particular chapter and read it and learn the lessons to save your life at the moment. There are some books that are so interrelated, that the chapters are so interrelated that you cannot learn anything from the preceding chapters. You have read the first chapters. You cannot learn anything from the succeeding chapters. You have read the preceding chapters. So there are books like that, but there are some that the chapters are so independent that you can actually read something from them. So you must not, at that moment, if you do not have all the time, you must not burden yourself with, I have to look for time to read everything. You can just pick 2-3 pages that will change your life and read from that book. My aim is not to encourage you to be lazy. It is good that you read the books from the beginning to the end, but instead of doing newspaper reading, it is better you read 5 pages that will impact you immediately and move on with your life activities than to read the whole book and then when you are asked what happened in chapter 1, you can't remember. When you are asked what happened in chapter 2, you can't remember. It is better to read one line and meditate on it and learn lessons than to just read the voluminous book and then go away without anything. So this is the crux of my message, that reading has to be programmed. It has to be intentional. It has to be properly programmed in such a way that the person who is reading we have the knowledge requisite enough. Have you noticed those people who usually stand at the newspaper spot where all these newspapers vendors usually have their shops? They just argue about national issues. sometimes devoid of knowledge. You know what happened? Because they just read this thing. Tomorrow, Obasike did this, and some of them are actually very intelligent. They can tell you the happenings because they follow it. But some of them just argue out of point. And you ask yourself, there was one time I was sitting at a guest inn with my friend, and then a policeman, sorry to mention, a man was arguing. Some group of men, I will not call their profession. I made that mistake of calling a policeman. So they were arguing, and then you just see they were just feeding each other with wrong information. It's because here he collects, and then without no intention to have the accurate information arranged. So anything that just comes, he just garbage in, and then when he's gisting with his friend, he thinks he's informed enough, and they start saying some of those things, and then they're just there, just lying to each other. And then my friend just told me that there is no need. They were trying to confirm some of the information from me, and then I was trying to respond. My friend just told me, if you try to respond, you're just going to get into argument with these people, because trying to give them the right information will not work, because they believe what they have heard or they have seen somewhere, and then it might not be true, and then but that forms the basis of their knowledge. So you must be selective in your approach to what you read. You must know what you want to learn, because it's not there are some people that are so faithful to a particular author that whatever he writes, that is what they follow, because these authors, one way or the other, mentor us and indirectly communicate to us. And if you have an author or somebody who you follow online, maybe a motivational speaker, I think, or a public speaker, or a teacher, or a religious person, I think it's good that you read their books. That helps you to give you an insight to what form the basis of their knowledge, or what they speak about, or what they do, if you don't understand from how they speak or what they do. So I would advise that from now henceforth, you should plan out the books you want to read and the authors you would like to look at, because for some of us, the knowledge we have is semi-baked, because there is a lot of confusion. Everybody just think of a thing now, they just write them down, you sell these books out, and then there is a lot of confusion in this space. So you must know how to read, what to read, and when to read it. Because sometimes you are about heading to marriage, or you are married and you're busy reading books that are not relevant at that moment. So you must begin to cut down the books to focus on the things that will benefit you and the things that you want to learn. So let's talk about finances and all that, family life. There are books, so many books on family life. There are so many books on financial independence and all that. So you have to tell yourself, and it is not because there is this error. Everybody is reading financial books. That is what you want to read. If your spirit or your mind is not directing to read financial books, please read books that you feel you are led to read, and probably that is what will bring you results. If you are led to read books that have to do with, let's talk about science or history, who knows? This might just be the next breakthrough you might have. There might be people who need this knowledge, and you have it, and you give it to them in abundance, and then they pay you for it. That is where your financial independence comes from. But immediately start making this money, and these monies are not staying, they are not able to multiply. You have to fall back to books that will show you how to maintain the little capital you have made, and then see how you can maximize the monies you have made from this other knowledge you have. So I would like to leave you here. If you have a comment, please drop. If you have a question I would like to attend to in the comment section, or you want to ask a question now, I really appreciate that. And if there is any other question, then I just want to say thank you very much for taking your time to stay with me and watch me. I pray that you have a nice time and have a better understanding of what I'm trying to discuss. In case you're just joining us and you don't really understand what I'm talking about, please, you can watch the broadcast, because I will be sharing the video either on YouTube and then on Facebook. So thank you very much, and I hope you do have a wonderful day. I can see Favor Adejo she's watching me right now. Anasa Ezefidelis, John D. Dwight, and then my mentor and friend, Barrister Orire, and then Mr. Joel Yorima. Thank you for taking your time to see this video. And for those that will be watching me subsequently, thank you and God bless you.